Hey, Helen here, your host. Great to have you along for the second season of The Beautiful Side of Grief, where we continue to hear from people from all walks of life who have faced or have been involved with heart-wrenching loss and who have come out the other side with so many positives to share with others. I know this may seem like an impossibility for you right here, right now, to be in that space. And believe me, I understand. I lost my own gorgeous 18-year-old daughter and only child in a car accident. Yet, here I am 4 years later, sharing my own journey and those of others in the most heartwarming and joyful way. Each and every one of my guests share their own beautiful insights and their strategies for getting through their grief. And through these stories, I hope you'll find your own way to deal with your grief in whatever form that may take. I'll pop my guest links and any free resources in the episode notes, along with my website address if you'd like to know more about the energy work I do, as that was my lifesaver in my own grief journey. Don't forget to subscribe and like so you can keep informed of each weekly episode. So now let's see who our guest is this week. So my guest today on this episode of The Beautiful Side of Grief is Jerry Fu, and he's a conflict resolution coach who helps Asian American leaders advance in their career and life journeys. Jerry's career has included pharmacy leadership roles. He began coaching in 2017 to help other Asian American professionals deal with the conflict they encounter at work, with their culture and within themselves. And prior to that, as a pharmacist, leadership workshop facilitator. Today, Jerry focuses on offering a range of coaching services, which includes individual coaching, group workshops, and keynote presentations. So if this interests you, I will pop his website link in the episode notes for you to follow up on. However, today, Jerry is going to share his experiences of losing a high school classmate in an accident and later a friend. I feel it's important to look at the impact of these losses, especially when they happen at a young age, as I believe that can shape our future profoundly. I'll also be chatting with him about conflict resolution, as I know this can be a big thing within families when death is unexpected and people have differing viewpoints on how things should be managed. Thanks for joining us today and listening in. I'm sure we're going to leave you with some great takeaways that I hope can help you out on your own journey. And I wish that journey to be filled with love, light, and hope. So now let's hear from Jerry. Jerry, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Helen. Glad to be here.
Jerry, I thought we'd start off by understanding what age you were in high school when you lost your fellow classmate and what your relationship with that person was and just the impact around that, because I believe that these things can leave huge imprints on our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. The friend I lost, her name was Karen. She moved to Tennessee, where I was living in 8th grade. She came from Pittsburgh, and you could tell right away, Helen, there was something different about her. Not just because she was very physically attractive, but she was very much on fire for Christianity. Like, she embraced Christianity from a young age, and things were happening in a way that you couldn't make things up. Like, I remember reading in her obituary that when she was 6, around Christmas Day, she had a vision from God. And she was so excited, she didn't even want to open her presents. Like, she was just like, I got a vision from God. And they're like, no, what kid doesn't want to open presents on Christmas Day, right? Like, this is not normal, right? There's something here that's different here. And anyway, all that to say was that as I got to know her, she was very flirty. Oh my gosh, Helen! Like, she just she just loved to get people's attention. It helped that she's a very attractive woman. But in this, the layer underneath all the banter was that she was serious about, my own faith and like trusting that as some Christians like to say, Jesus is right and he's worth following. And so she's very intentional with having these difficult conversations with me, even as we took classes together, even as she asked me for help with her homework, all these other things. And in the middle of high school, basically what the simplest explanation is that I learned that things were beyond my control. Like, I thought I had everything I wanted. And when friendship wise, high school problems are very small, but at the moment you think, oh my gosh, my world is falling apart because my friends don't like me anymore. And so for better or worse, that insecurity, led Karen to give me an opportunity to join her at church camp the summer after our sophomore year of high school. And she's like, hey, I really want you to join me with this. And I think it'd be good for you. And I said, sure, why not? And so at that point, it's with Christianity or any major step of faith, right? I think you just know enough just to get involved to it. You don't realize everything that the journey involves until you've been on the journey long enough time, whether it's marriage or other major commitments in life, right? But at the time, I knew enough where I said, "What I want to become a Christian." And so, of course, she was extremely happy and elated that I had chosen this for myself, or it was something that started my heart. And so the following Sunday, got baptized at the nearby church where we all grew up, and things seemed all right. You're in that new believer honeymoon stage and everyone else is all excited for you. And then a month after this happened, Karen died in a car crash. She was took a right turn at an intersection by the school. Another car ran a red light, struck her driver's side. And next thing you know, and the weird thing is just seeing that play out in real time. A classmate supposedly drove up to my house, it was super late at night because this happened fairly late, and trying to get my attention. I was already asleep, so I had no idea he was trying to do this. And then woke up the next morning, and then I saw some people in the school office asking about her, turning to her yearbook picture and things like that. And they said, "Why are they asking about Karen?" And then that's when I found the truth, was that, yeah, she died in this car crash. And honestly, the whole school stopped, Helen. We had some deaths before. Some people needed some counseling, maybe 10 or 15 people, but Karen's life touched so many people. And so the school just stopped for a day, just people mourning the loss and just wondering, for a girl who claimed to love and know God so intimately, why he would call her home so quickly in our eyes, because a lot of people embrace Christianity as a result of her influence, but a lot of Christians also struggled and may have even fallen away simply because they couldn't reconcile how a good God wouldn't allow her to have a long, full life with marriage, career, kids, things like that. And and it's not to judge the grieving at all, because Karen's mom, her health became very, her health started to suffer as she grieved the loss of Karen as well as of her daughter. And her funeral was a year later, just because she just couldn't recover from something like that. And so that is the legacy that I have to live with, because I was one of the last people she witnessed to before she passed. And so now it's like, oh, no pressure, Jerry. What do you do with that? So yeah, that's the grief that I've dealt with. And actually, I lost another friend, a pharmacy friend, in similar circumstances. She also died in a car crash. I think she was 24 or 25 and her death. And so it's tough to even have not one, but two very attractive women of character lose their lives so quickly. So yep, that's what I'm dealing with.
I so resonate with so much of your story as you were talking about that, because my daughter was larger than life, and she was very flirty also. And she had this beautiful smile that she would just switch on, and it would pretty much get her whatever she wanted. It was just, one of those smiles. And again, I remember feeling that great need to support her friends, because again, like your friend Karen, she was larger than life, and her death impacted so many people. And we had so many people at her funeral. She just touched across all walks of life. And I had no idea the impact that in such a short life she had made. So I certainly share what you're saying, and I'm so sorry for your losses. Because I know that they will impact on you greatly. But there's another thing that you brought out there. This drew some people closer to Christianity and that religion, and others moved away from that. And I understand that, because when you have complete faith and trust in your God, and then suddenly something like this happens, it really makes you question it. And for other people, and it's a tough question, and there's no right or wrong answers to it. I think it's just the journey that you need to go on yourself in understanding that. So I get that. So let's have a look now at what sort of impact that had on you, because here you are left with losing not one friend, but two really good friends. What impact did that have on your life?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that it just gave me, it was like a pretty heavy dose of perspective as to what was really. I remember seeing a saying on one of my technicians' walls at work. It says, "It's not what we have, but who we have." And I think that really is true here, because you don't know, right? I mean, we don't want to sound morbid, but it is, like, who are you really investing in with your life? Like, what kind of legacy are you leaving with this, right? Because like with Karen and Lacey's life, there was no question just how many people they impacted with their lives. And, part of it is really connecting and finding the opportunity to minister and encourage people who have been suffering with this kind of loss, right? Because I've always been told it's always a tragedy when a parent outlives their kids, right? It's not a burden any parent we wish to live with for anything like that. But I guess the question to ask is, what is the opportunity here, right? To really help people dealing with this kind of suffering. I think the first step is just to recognize, hey, you know what? You're not alone in grieving this loss, right? Your daughter was loved by many, many people. So it's not, even if the parents have a heavier burden than other people, as long as, Kara was a part of my life, that I have to remind myself of the legacy she left when she witnessed. And same thing with Lacey. What was her life about? How can we carry that on, right? Just to really not just let her life just get caught up in the sea of busyness and they disappear, because it is. I think about plenty of people who, I think of another high school student I knew while I was in school, and he passed away. Maybe 10 people were sad that he left, but it's like, okay. On one hand, no one would expect him to have like a massive impact, as a teenager, but for the ones that do, how do you deal with that? So, I mean, basically it's just to really be attentive to the people who are hurting like this, right? And just say, hey, look, let's make time see how they're doing, be intentional with keeping up with them and making sure, hey, we're not here to spoon feed you anything. We don't want to take pity on you. We just want to know how you can move on with your life in a way that is healthy and meaningful, despite having this massive loss on your mind a lot of days.
So it sounds to me like you made a conscious decision to focus on people rather than things out of all of this. It's about the people and the experiences you have with them and how you can help them. And that's a beautiful thing to come out of this all. I love that. And so, obviously you've carried on with your faith and supporting others with that, which is a really beautiful thing. Now, you also mentioned that, was it Karen's mum, that she passed away soon after? And again, this is probably something that prompts me to do this podcast, is that, I often see people getting really devastated and stuck in their grief. And so this is one reason I want people to be listening to so many different perspectives, to give them something to help them along their way. And do you think that's what Karen's mum died of, a broken heart?
I believe so. I wish there's an official clinical diagnosis for it, but it really is, because the phrase I heard recently that I think kind of sums up the cognitive dissonance that people have with this is that they don't have a theology for tragedy. And I wouldn't be so shallow or judgmental to say, well, things like this just happened, right? Like, that's just, no one wants to hear that in that moment. When I talked to Lacey's mom about her death, and she's just like, I don't understand how anyone can believe in God after something like this. And it wasn't up to me to convince her otherwise. So no, you're wrong. God is still good. Like, it's just up to you to strengthen your faith. Like that, even if I'm right, like that doesn't help the situation at all. And just to really ask yourself, on top of to say, hey, how do we take this situation to really raise awareness so that other people can have perspective, right? And really inspire them to really focus on investing in what's truly important, which is the people in their lives, and not just chasing after things. I think that's one of the things I know I have to keep checking myself, even as I build a business and even as I'm doing things, right? It's like, okay, no, this is about relationships more than anything. So how do I demonstrate gratitude and invest in these relationships intentionally? For sure.
Yeah, I get that, because that's another thing that I really like to focus on, and it's being able to tell people how you feel about them. Like, tell them in the moment, don't assume that they know what you feel about them, because quite often people don't. They make their own assumptions like that. And so really we need to be communicating how we feel about people in the here and now, because you never know what is around that corner. And you've got an example of 2 young lives that were just taken very quickly, very tragically. And there's no second chances to go back and say what you wanted to say. So you have to be making sure that is how you're living your life intentionally. So did it make you think about your own mortality?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's, you see you have to ask yourself, what am I really living for? Because I had a career in mind, right? I had a degree in mind. I had a certain life path in mind, but so much of it was for personal success and accolades and achievement instead of like true significance, right? I think about the example that just comes to mind. I think about when I was in Prague and I at the Communist Museum, they talk about how Stalin ordered that a statue be sculpted in his name and to be erected in the city. And the sculptor was coerced into making the statue, committed suicide after that because he couldn't live with the fact that he had created this abomination under duress, things like that. And it's just kind of like, yeah, is this what I'm like? Is this how I want to be remembered? Right? This is now how I should have to leave a legacy. And so to ask myself, yeah, that basically is to continue to ask myself, what is my legacy? Right? What kind of legacy am I leaving now? How is it different from the legacy I want to leave? And if it is different, how do I actually kind of course correct so that I'm leaving the legacy that I want to leave? Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what Karen's life taught me. That's what Joyce's life taught me, just to say, hey, no one is here to take away from the doubts that you have when it comes to a God who we say is all knowing, all powerful, and all one. And yet there's a lot of brokenness in this world we have to deal with. And how does that point us back to bigger things, more important things?
I like what you say about legacy, because it also helps you think about your definition of success. Mm-hmm. And often success is, like you say, not those accolades and not the amount of money you're making in that. It's about the relationships you form with people. That's the true success. That's when in your heart that you've really made an impact on and been able to help other people in their own lives. So that's really, really lovely. And I just wanted to ask you, did you require any support around dealing with these losses, or is that something that you got through your faith, or how did you manage those?
I'm no Superman for sure, Helen. I can assure you that. No, if I look back and I see how each situation played out. I mean, a lot of the students in the youth group when Karen passed were there for each other, just to say, hey, let's come together. Her dad constructed a memorial garden at our high school in her name. I think, yeah, just having that collective community of saying, hey, everybody who knew her, let's come together and let's grieve together. Let's figure out how we want to find closure in the situation and just trust that. Hey, let's put aside our differences. Let's really get back to making sure that we are investing in each other, even if we weren't the best of friends, even if there's only, so much we can do for each other in our relationships. And then, Lacey was similar because we were in the same pharmacy fraternity. People reached out as soon as they found out for me, because they knew how much she meant to me in my life and to me as you, Helen. So the funny thing is that, so when I saw a website for Lacey's memorial and they had a chance to buy flowers or plants or other things like that. So I bought a floral arrangement and sent it to her family. And so of all things, Helen, like Lacey's mom actually texted me from Lacey's phone. And I nearly jumped out of my skin. She's like, Jared, this is Lacey's mom. Did you send flowers? And because Lacey's mom didn't know who I was, like she had no idea. She's like, who's this Jerry guy? And then she went back into Lacey's phone, figured out our relationship or our friendship, and then, reached out. And so that's why we have a friendship now, just because, yeah. So we agreed to commit to each other, even though like she's off doing her thing now and I'm still doing mine. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, yeah, the friends around each girl really came together in a beautiful way in order to support each other. So that's the support I had, because there was no way I was just going to be able to just sit in my room and just get over it. Like I would never be a role model in that regard for getting over grief. I think you have to have time to process and just go to God and just say, God, I don't know what to do with this.
I think that's what catches a lot of people out, though, because sometimes when you're on the edge of it, like you're not the immediate family or persons dealing with that loss, sometimes you are left to your own devices to try and make sense of it. And unless you've got a community or a group of people that you can go and process it with, then it can take a completely different path for you if you're left unsupported, which is why I asked you, because I understand people on the edges quite often getting left to deal with their own grief. And I think we need to be more aware and understanding of that. And I think your tribe can be even just one single person that you relate to, that you can go and just talk and have no judgment, just be able to say what you want to say. And that's the value of that. But I definitely think that you do need somebody or a group of people preferably around you. So yeah, it's beautiful that you had that, and beautiful connection that you made with Lacey's mum. And I know, because I still haven't closed down Tal's Facebook. So sometimes I'll post out there. So across her friend that flashes up. And I'm, oh my God, here we go again.
Oh no.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. I know I will know when the time is right to do that. But for now, it just gives me great peace and comfort to be able to look back and see what her beautiful friends wrote about her and how they remember her and things like that. So it's a little bit selfish for me.
Enjoy it as much as you want. No, that's your call now. It is your profile now for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So let's have a look around. Both of these friends, they had car accidents. Does this make you think about the way you drive and the vulnerability of you in your vehicle?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, honestly, I've been in Houston for about 11 years now, and I'll be happy to admit the only way to survive among monsters is to become one half the time. And I know it's it's a terrible thing to admit, but it is true, because sometimes you have to resort to some pretty extreme driving techniques that that the manuals would not condone in order to avoid crashes or other things. And yeah, I mean, I lost my car back in 2013 when another car ran a red light at a feeder and spun out, left me with nothing. And so it is, whenever I see a yellow now, I double check myself and say, what, let me just wait another minute or two, because it's just not worth the risk of hitting someone if I'm going to try to run this light just because I'm in a rush. So it is something to double check for sure.
When Tal died, her initials were TKS. And we had those in her heart with "it can wait." So it can wait if you drop something on the floor, or you're going to change the channel for the radio, or just those moments of distraction. We don't know what actually officially caused her accident. We had this quick 40-second phone call. I still didn't realize she was driving.
Oh.
And you know, Jerry, at first I thought, oh my God, I caused her accident. You know, that's when I realized, because her accident happened 2 minutes after that phone call. And then I thought, no, I'm going to flip this around. I had the opportunity to say I love her and to say goodbye to her. And how grateful was I for that? I know you mentioned to me that Lacey's mum is still searching for the company that actually created that accident in which she lost her life in. And how many years on is that?
Lacey passed in 2013, so it's 8 years now.
Yeah. And is her mum still on that quest to find, or?
She's doing what she can, yeah. But it's not leading to a lot, because no company wants to admit this kind of liability, unfortunately.
Yeah, because it's such a tricky area. There's a side wanting justice for your child, and there can often be no resolution for this, no answers that are going to actually change the situation or bring back your loved one or provide closure even. So I certainly can't speak for Lacey's mum and her reasons for doing it, but I do think about that a lot, and it's a tricky situation. What are your thoughts around that? Because it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I think, I don't think there's a right answer in this situation. No. It's just more about, I guess for her, what brings her closure, right? It's just to say, hey, look, I know that suing this company, assuming that she figures out who it is, like suing this company doesn't bring Lacey back, but at the same time, you still want some level of a cautionary tale, because you want everybody to understand, like, this isn't punitive simply to get the company, to penalize the company for their mistake. This is meant to be kind of like a warning shot for all these companies that say, hey, look, like, safety is important, right? Like, we are losing people because there's some degree of carelessness or some degree of neglect. This cannot continue, right? This is not acceptable. Like, we should not be settling for a lesser standard that's going to needlessly jeopardize people. And so in that regard, if this is the kind of message that she wants to get across, by all means, please pursue it, because the inaction, I think, is unacceptable. Like, you still have to, let's try.
Oh, yeah, I'm really glad I had this discussion with you about it, because that's what discussion does. It brings you a completely different perspective looking at things. And there are so many people out there that would just be saying, let it go. But then, like you say, really, really good reason to be highlighting the issues and making companies accountable so that they think twice about, what they're doing out there, so we don't lose other precious lives. Yes, yeah. And I look at that. I did the same thing about lowering the speed on the road that my daughter died on. And I was going against the flow, definitely going against the flow. And I just thought, well, I'm not going to make it personal. I'm going to make this factual, because, there are facts in this that need to be highlighted and heard. It was a dangerous road, always it had been. And yeah, and so now I feel at peace, because I know that lowering the speed has given people a couple of more seconds to be able to have a better reaction time and make a better decision if they do get themselves into a tricky. So you're a conflict resolution. Oh gosh, I'm getting that mucked up. Conflict resolution coach.
There you go.
There we go. Got that one out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because there are many, many families that get caught up in conflict and lose sight of perhaps the key thing about loss, because they're so busy trying to get their point across and wanting it to be their way. So what would you recommend, or what would your suggestions be to families or even different parties that are unable to agree about how things should proceed?
Yeah, I'm laughing because a friend of mine, his uncle passed recently, and he told me all the family drama dynamics of, like, the uncle wanted to be cremated, but then his mom insisted on a real burial, and it's just kind of like, well, he's not around to argue that, so we're going to do whatever. And it's sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, like, this is what happens? Oh, well.
That's exactly what happens, and it happens more than we realize. Family dynamics.
Yeah, and everyone has a preference, because everyone has different ways of interpreting death and, how to best honor the life of a loved one. And so I'm not here to offer a cure-all elixir. Believe me, I would make millions if that were the case. But yeah, I know. Sorry, guys. But I can offer some questions that I think will hopefully center people around what's truly important, right? And so then to ask yourself, number one, what are you really trying to accomplish here? Right. Hopefully the answer is we want to honor the life of someone we cared about deeply, and we want to give them the proper amount of respect. How do we do that? Right. Do we give a eulogy? How do we honor his wishes? Right. If we're truly about respecting him, what did he specifically want for himself that when he was passing? And you have to ask yourself another question: is this a principle or is this a preference? Right. Okay.
Explain the difference between the two. So
yeah.
But they understand clearly what you're saying.
Absolutely. So yeah, I have to be careful not to just delve into coach speak. Let me elaborate on this. So a simple example of a preference, right? What kind of music should we have? Do we want a guitar? Do we want a piano? You can split hairs over that all day, right? But at the end of the day, hopefully people realize that this is just my own preference, that let me put that aside and truly honor what my uncle wanted, right? And then a principle. Yeah. So what is essential here? Not even just what is important, what is essential? Hey, we want to honor his life. He said he wanted cremation. Okay, well, even if I believe the Bible says that cremation is irreverent or inappropriate, let me do my part to honor what he actually wanted. And so if that is the principle, okay, we cannot compromise that, right? Oh, well, I want a burial. Okay, well, you can want a lot of things, but he wanted a cremation. Let's go with the cremation, right? And to be able to say, hey, look, guys, do we want what's best for him? Yes. Let's affirm what's truly important. And that will help figure out the difference between a principle and a preference. Because if you're just asking yourself all these small logistical questions, those are preferences. But if you're arguing over whether or not to disregard what he wanted for himself, now that's a principle that you cannot afford to compromise, right? What is the heart of the matter? Yeah, this is it.
So it's basically taking the personal out of it.
Yes, that's basically it. Yeah, just to say, okay, what do I want? But more importantly, what does he want?
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, because I know that we had this. I'm the youngest of 5, and my mother passed when I was 23. But prior to that, she'd had a long illness. And as the youngest in the family, whatever I said didn't mean to
Oh, no.
nobody listened to me,
Oh.
like that. And I just sort of, and because I think quite differently from the rest of my family, that I think they all thought I was a wee bit left field and that. But so I just learned, exactly what was the thing that mum most needed, regardless of what I thought or I felt. And when I live peacefully with those choices today.
Good.
Okay. Anything else around conflict that you'd like to throw into the mix and have people think about?
Sure. I mean, I think we need to celebrate first that enough people have enough opinions that they want to share them. Right. Let's celebrate the honesty that people have, that people care enough about this person's life that they have an idea of what should happen. Right. And so conflict in this case is not a bad thing. It is just the reaction to the conflict that it's really.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So separate the challenge from the consequences, and then we realize it's like, because I tell people about, hey, there is such thing as healthy conflict and unhealthy conflict. Where healthy conflict is, hey, we have disagreements, but those disagreements are all working toward a common goal, right? That's fine. But it's when you have unhealthy conflict where people just get petty and they say, well, I want my way, even if it's destructive. And that's when you start to realize you've lost the relationship, because it's more about me being right instead of what is the right thing to do in the situation. So, I think if people, number one, I think I would just say, hey, celebrate honesty. And number two, shift from confrontation to collaboration. Just to say, hey, look, do we believe we're on the same? No. Okay. How do we get on the same side? Do we believe be on the same side? Because if you can't, just stop. It's just sign over power of attorney to someone who is not emotionally wrapped up in the situation and just move. And have those fail safes in place to say, okay, look, if none of us can agree on this, okay, we all agree to just, outsource it to somebody else who isn't going to get petty on us, and we're going to take care of things. So just have a clear plan of attack, and just make sure that if you get deadlocked, make sure you still have a backup just to make sure that things still move forward. And I think you have a fighting chance.
Is that what you would recommend if somebody, or if you're dealing with people or someone who is really angry, the same sort of thing? Because sometimes anger clouds the ability to think clearly and rationally.
I think, I mean, that if emotions get in the way of sound decision making, absolutely. Right. On one hand, you don't want to disregard emotions completely, because I think we're human. We have emotions.
Yeah.
We need to, and ideally we would figure out what story are those emotions telling us? Like, why are these emotions coming up? Okay, now that I have some level of awareness, right, how do I want to act on this? How do I get back to these emotions that are gratitude and perspective and humility and closure, so that I can truly honor this person's life and still ideally draw closer to the remaining family members that are still here, so that we actually put aside more differences instead of let those differences fray the relationships further, right? Let's draw together. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are an angry person, the thing to do would be just step back and say, okay, this is not emotional. Let's just set the emotion aside, because that makes me reactive. And then just allow yourself to think and come down off that, because really that's what people are doing, aren't they? When they're letting emotions drive the conversation or whatever, it's purely reaction. And you can't come into a good resolution from there.
Yeah. And to dovetail on that, if you need counseling, there's no that. That's a stigma that needs to go away. If you honestly say, hey, look, I've tried to process this on my own. I've asked a couple of friends. I'm still not finding some degree of resolution. Okay, let me seek out some professional help. There is to asking for help when you come to the end of yourself is wise. It's not weak. And to be able to do that, okay, let me get some help just to be sure I get through this. Absolutely.
And asking in the early stages, don't wait for it to be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. Don't let yourself get to that point.
True.
I remember going through a tough time with my daughter when she was 14. And I actually put her into counseling, because there was just her and I. And I thought, gosh, I don't know what it is you need, but whatever it is, I want to support you with that. So even if it's me, that's the issue. This is your safe space to be able to get whatever it is off your chest and deal with it. And I was so grateful that I was big enough to do that for her, because it took next to no time at all. A couple of sessions, she was back on track, and I had a completely different teenager for the rest of her teen years. And I'm really grateful for that, because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I had no regrets at the end of the day. So that was beautiful. I want people to understand that reaching out, seeking help early is a good thing, not a bad thing at all. Right. Now, let's wrap it up here, Jerry, because it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and you've just covered some really, really good information for us. So let me know what the best thing is that's happened to you either today or in this past week.
Oh man, I think the best thing, honestly, just meeting people like you and all these other great podcast hosts that care enough to start a platform and do something with it, right? Because anyone who cares enough to start a platform on podcast, and it clearly has a message they want the world to enjoy and benefit from. And so, I've been amazed at what Podmatch has done for me to introduce me to people like you and just have a chance to have a meaningful conversation as we help each other add value and content to each other's platforms and increase exposure for both of us. So I've made today, this has been my 5th podcast, and it's been great just all the conversations I've had. So happy to connect in a way. COVID is crazy, but I've met so many people internationally that I wouldn't have otherwise if we didn't have to force ourselves to use technology to move things forward.
I would have to say that that's a highlight of me doing this podcast, is that I get to meet so many incredibly wonderful people that I would never otherwise have met. And everybody's got a story. And to be able to have this platform for them to share it is just fills my heart. So that's great. So if you're having a moment where things are turning to custard, not going so well for you, what is your number one to pivot yourself out of that?
Yeah, great question. I think just a mind dump onto a sheet of paper is really the easiest thing. People, whether you journal in the morning or just in the heat of the moment and you're just I just feel so overwhelmed, just get everything out on paper. What are my thoughts? I'm angry about this. I'm worried about this, da. And the sooner you catalog this and you can ask yourself, why is this on my mind? Or even better, now that these are out on paper and I can look at these things objectively, how do I want to act on them? The sooner you get things out of your head and onto paper, the more likely you are to be able to do something constructive with it instead of just let things bounce around here all day and then distract you and get you to get stuck. So that's what I would suggest people try.
Oh, that's a great tool to have, because like you say, many people like myself live in my head. And sometimes it's a tough place to get away from, because like you say, you go from every different scenario and perspective and you just lose yourself at the end of the day. So dump it. Really good, really, really good tool to have. So what would you like to leave our listeners with? What are your top 3 or more takeaways that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, great question. I think the first is ask yourself, what would center me in this? When I wake up, what would help center me? What would help ground me and get me in the right frame of mind for the day? Is it journaling? Is it meditation? Is it prayer? Is it relaxing music? Is it exercise? What kind of morning routine can I start to really help win the day? So that's one thing that comes to mind, especially if you're someone who's grieving and you say, hey, I don't want to get out of bed. And no one would fault you if you just want to curl up in bed and just, just take it easy for the day. That's, I think, a perfectly justified holiday. And after you've enjoyed that holiday, what are you going to do next? Because rent don't stop, right? Bills need to be paid. The rest of the world didn't stop. I guess another takeaway would simply be I think of Stephen Covey's 7 highly effective habits, and to say, seek first to understand, then to be understood, right? There's a level of humility and curiosity that come with building good relationships and solid relationships, especially with people that you wouldn't normally think that you could identify with or connect with. That I think would really help, really kind of grease the wheels in society, just make sure that people can actually get along, even if they're have different interests in mind. And then the third is to ask yourself, kind of tying back into the winning the day, what kind of legacy am I leaving? If I died tomorrow, what would people say about me? And then if I don't like what people would say about me, what's one thing I can do to change that? Keep the changes small, make tiny adjustments, and then just trust that the trajectory will eventually add up over time.
Oh, such good takeaways. Thank you, Jerry. The value you've added in this less than an hour has just been phenomenal. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day, your busy day, by the sounds of it, by 5 podcasts in one day. That's pretty impressive. So my thanks to you for your time, your insights, your wisdom, sharing with our listeners today.
Yeah, you're welcome. And if anyone's curious, if they want some extra resources, you can find me on LinkedIn. The website is adaptingleaders.com. I have a free PDF you can download regarding how to have difficult conversations with people in your life. And then also you can schedule a free 30-minute call if you just want to tell me more about whatever challenge you're dealing with. And that's no strings attached. Just have 30 minutes of professional help.
Beautiful. That's a fantastic offer. Thank you, Jerry. And I will have all the links, to those resources and that in the episode notes so people can easily find them. So again, my thanks.
All right. Thank you for having me. Have a good day, everybody.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode today, be sure to share it with others. Hit the subscribe or like button so you can be notified of each weekly episode. Also, let me know how I'm doing, especially if there's more you'd like to know that perhaps we didn't get time to touch on today or in past episodes. And if you're after resources to help you out on this journey or more about the energy healing work I do, hit the Healing to Be You link. That's the word healing, 2, letter B, letter U.com. So until next time, be kind to you and thank you for joining us on the beautiful side of grief.